Democracy Beyond Borders, a Europe Reimagined, an organization shaping transnational politics and social justice. This is European Alternatives, working to strengthen democracy and citizen participation beyond the nation state. What are its goals, achievements, and plans for the future? In this interview, Marta Cillero, Communication Director of European Alternatives, represents the organization to discuss its vision and work. This is Forum Europeum's interview on European alternatives.
The first question is about the origins and the purpose of the organization. So, can you briefly explain the founding vision of European Alternatives?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me and for inviting European Alternatives to talk a bit about us and our ideas. I think you're doing a great job. Well, about how we started in 2006, so quite some time ago. And they were like a group of like-minded people with not very much resources. And it rapidly became clear that there was this need of having an organization that could empower individuals, a new generation of Europeans to act for different ideas and different futures in very different ways. Basically, the idea that it's there since the beginning is that we believe that Europe can be a space for political invention and progress with different global implications, but only with a radical vision of it. And so the task of EA since its origin was to contribute to educating, empowering, organizing these groups of aligned and mind-alike people to act across borders locally from their local realities. And since then, we've been doing that in many different ways, involving different types of people, not only in what is conceived as the European Union, but also Europe and beyond. And so in the end, also across the world, even in the Americas, Africa, Asia. Maybe I have the chance to talk a bit about it later on.
Yeah, so from what I heard, European Alternatives is not a Eurocentric organization, but they work in many different areas and many different regions as well.
Exactly. We do have different offices in different European cities, in Palermo, in Paris, in Berlin, and we used to have one also in London. But we also have local groups that are active in Eastern Europe, and we also mobilize Northern African cities and make connections, as I said, with Asian cities in North and South America. So for us, Europe, it's also an idea and a kind of excuse to talk about very different issues.
The role of arts and culture is very important for European Alternatives. And because of that, I would like to ask the following question. How does EA or European Alternative see arts and culture as tools for fostering political and social change?
In general, we advocate for the use of art as a tool for fostering political and social change. We do see the arts and culture as essential components in shaping democratic participation and intercultural dialogue. And our belief is that creativity and cultural practices can inspire critical thinking, challenge also dominant narratives, and provide alternative visions of the type of future we want. Art can also provide a space for experimentation in ways that perhaps other practices don't allow it that much. So at EA, we often talk about experimentation and trying different ways of making things possible, and definitely art is a tool that makes that happen.
So can we say that the Gramscian perspective that culture should influence politics and not the other way around is the idea or the ideology of European Alternatives or not?
That's a good question. I didn't think about it. I personally think that the relationship between culture and politics cannot be seen as unidirectional in a way, and that the two influence each other in an organic and interrelated way. So what happens in society influences our culture and the other way around. So no, I wouldn't see it as unidirectional relationship. And that's why I think it's also important to be active in both fields.
The next topic is Europe as a space for reinvention. So on the website of European Alternatives, we can read the following quote: Europe had to be reclaimed and reinvented, made hospitable to others and to other ideas. So first of all, I would like to ask you, how can Europe leverage its historical strengths, such as democratic invention, human rights, and intellectual achievements, to reinvent itself?
In regards to its possibilities to reinvent itself also in today's geopolitical and cultural polarized world, I think this is a question that many thinkers, activists, and politicians are putting their heads around in the recent years. Europe's geopolitical and cultural landscape is indeed more polarized probably than ever and shaped by a range of factors, from rising nationalism, economic disparities, migration, tension between global powers, just to name a few. But still there are some possibilities for reinvention, though maybe sometimes it seems difficult to see. But if Europe is to reinvent itself, it would need to reframe this diversity not as something that divides, but as a unique strength. And instead of focusing on what separates Europeans and countries, there could be an emphasis on shared values like human rights, democracy, and solidarity that we all have. Myself, I'm coming originally from Spain, but living in Italy for quite some years. And are two very strongly nationalist countries. But in the common human values that we share, it is easy to find similarity. So sometimes a way to contest the European projects is to indeed focus on the differences and on the language barriers in our strong cultural traditions, and sometimes that's just an added value. And there are many commonalities that perhaps there are not that many opportunities for us to exchange on. And I mean, the Erasmus project is a very, in terms of university exchange, I think it's an example that is often used because it's probably a space in which practically people are having this kind of exchanges. And maybe if you want to talk about it more in the political, philosophical sense, it is complicated, but these are the spaces in which we should be looking at, like the points that can make connections and not bring distance.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, we can talk about challenges and how we should address them. So, first of all, we should speak about universal rights and democracy. So, EA has pointed out that the current European regime undermines its claims to universal rights, democracy, and justice. So, what specific reforms are urgently needed in this topic?
I mean, we need strong transnational institutions, and we need active and informed citizens that activate for it and advocate. And now more than ever, it's imperative that maybe we fortify our commitment to democracy. In that sense, we are currently advocating for quite a transformative initiative, which is the creation of the first democracy intergroup at the European Parliament. An intergroup could simply offer the flexibility and inclusivity that traditional maybe committees often lack, and it could serve as a dynamic platform for engaging with civil society, citizens, residents, and other types of organizations that at the moment is maybe a bit more difficult to access. And so by making this connection with grassroots movements, academics, and external democratic activists, with this intergroup, we could bridge this gap and foster dialogues exposing on our political representatives to the democratic experimentation that is actually happening across the union, and sometimes is not reflected in the institutions that much. So this is quite a concrete, I don't know if calling it reform, but idea that could start making a difference.
We can also talk about bridging divides. So organizations like EA are sometimes criticized as being too metropolitan or residing in an ivory tower. So how does EA address these perceptions and connect with diverse communities?
Yeah, I understand where this criticism comes from, because they are indeed organizations that work in that way and are sometimes just replicating systems that have failed and are perpetuating, sometimes systems of oppression or narratives or dynamics that are not anymore functioning, not way in which EA works. And we strongly believe in the need of connecting peripheral communities, rural areas with more metropolitan areas, and have this exchange. So we very often bring our activities to these places and have real connection and activities with the actors in these fields. So our activities are deeply based and connecting to our surrounding reality. So in the specifics, we always try to organize our events deeply embedded with the local context we operate in, whether that's our main neighborhoods in Palermo or Paris, where we have offices, but also in the context of international partners. We never arrive in a city and work on our own, but always need to rely on the local reality that is there. So being located in the specific cities and having specific partners impacts our work in a very specific way, because we are in direct contact with these people and with the local communities that very often influence the decisions that we take also in programming or in the curatorial or political aspects of our work. So in the process of putting together all these project proposals of activities, we take into account these needs, these desires, and the discussions that we have with the local partners and with our target audiences in order to engage them in a meaningful and sustainable way. Um, and actually, what for us the ideal scenario is that sometimes EA brings the seeds of some ideas that sometimes they continue without our mobilization, sometimes they don't, but for sure we try to understand and to work with the conditions of the reality in which we operate without imposing anything. So we involve and work with a diverse range of people, not from very different backgrounds and countries, and in particularly Italy, Germany, and France, where we have offices, but also we have active groups in Bulgaria or Romania, and we try to have also this exchange with the different groups.
Education and empowerment are central to EA's mission. So, how can you organize events in which you can educate people on, for example, topics related to the European Union itself or Europe itself?
In very different ways. As I was saying at the beginning, we are multidisciplinary in the sense that we try to use very different formats. So that is talking to different profiles of people. Concretely speaking, we have a training program with different possibilities to different audiences and participants that provide specific tools and knowledge to activists and citizens that want to be active in their communities. And to give a concrete example, we have this learning platform called the Movement Learning Catalyst, where very different formats and contents and in different languages can be found. Maybe the URL is movementlearning.org. And there's a repository of contents, as I said, in different digital formats, but not only. For us, Transeuropa Festival, which is our main festival that takes place every 2 years in a different European city. It's also a tool for us for education and training, where we are not building the capacity of the participants, but the participants are also building our capacity. So we see it as a space of co-creation where different possibilities can happen. There's these different levels of exchange, and we're using walks around the cities with a specific thematic or exhibitions, concerts, more traditional political debates. All these animates and in a way trains or can change the perspective of who is attending our activities. So it is important indeed to talk to different audiences to take this into account and not have perhaps a unique way of educating or empowering. And I want to say this in a not patronizing way, because as I said, we also do learn all the time, and also our capacities are empowered by being in touch with people. I think this is also something that we should try to reclaim more and more, and actually having these kind of spaces that you are providing, it is very important. So to have this kind of spaces for reflection and exchange.
Talking about Transeuropa Festival and different spaces, the slogan for the Transeuropa Festival in 2023 in Cluj-Napoca was holding spaces. Further, it's holding spaces is more important, not only in a physical sense, but also in a symbolic sense. So, talking about reclaiming spaces, how should Europe re-examine its values by reclaiming not only physical spaces, but also virtual and meta spaces?
We understand the virtual and the digital space as an extension of our physical spaces that should be understood with our identities and not separated. And I think sometimes maybe that's also the mistake in a way, that the motto holding spaces of Transeuropa Festival edition 2023 was going in this direction of identifying where these different spaces are and make them come together, because our identities very often are more and more shaped by the digital. We sometimes, I mean, from COVID on, but also I think it's also the nature a bit of the lifestyles that we're living. Like, it's not difficult to find someone that works from remote digitally, maybe also follows a Pilates class from YouTube, read the newspaper online, watch movies on streaming, and even has a video phone calls with family members that are far away. So this is building our real lives, this virtual and digital that sometimes seems to detach, but that is why it's also fundamental to reclaim our rights there. So in this sense, what we reclaim in the physical spaces must be extended also to the virtual space, where even sometimes we're more vulnerable because of lack of education on it, or for lack of awareness that this is actually what is happening. Like, even our sometimes sexual lives are also happening online. And even, I mean, with artificial intelligence, what to say, like, there's also people starting to have relationships even with digital individuals. So these reflections cannot be ignored. And and it's definitely part of today's main debate.
Connected to this topic, the next question is about the creation of a European social media. So, my question is that would the creation of a new European social media help us in creating our spaces?
Yeah, it could. Why not? I think it's. I mean, it seems like a simple idea, but it's the first time that I actually hear it, like, proposed in this way. I think these are the kind of questions that we need to be asking ourselves. And for sure, we can stay neutral to the big tech threats to democracy and their control on the mainstream narratives. And at EA, we are continuously having this kind of discussion. We have at the moment this active debate about how we should inhabit these spaces and with what intention. There's different organizations deciding to leave Meta or X for political reasons. So together we want to learn how big tech influences our lives, the European Union, and how movements have successfully also fought back this reality, and what we can do now to maybe retake or reclaim our power from multinational companies. Our friends or partners at Another Europe is Possible, that it's also an organization based in the UK. They are hosting an online event on this topic on the 20th, I think, by end of February. I'm saying 20th, but maybe better to check. An online debate panel on this topic that I would recommend you to attend, because it's the kind of discussion that we need to be having now.
The next topic is European alternatives contribution to public discourse. So EA has a journal called EA Journal, and what types of contribution does the EA Journal seek? That's the first question. And the second question is that how do these contributions align with EA's mission to imagine alternatives beyond the nation state?
We mostly welcome like written contributions like articles and essays, but we also welcome photos and video pieces that reflect new visions on how we see the world. At the moment, we have an open call for articles on the topic of education, democracy, and participation, open until the 10th of February, that I invite you to check out. And we hope that the EA journal can be precisely a space, as we were saying before, for reflection and exchange of these ideas. We mostly, in the past few numbers, we've been talking a lot about our work and the work of our partners, but we decided to launch this open call also to increase our reach and to invite other voices to have a say. It was also one of the first things that EA did back in 2007. And it has long been a space to map out these visions and pathways for alternatives and have a presentation of open and radical ideas of how we imagine Europe in our lives. So basically, the magazine it's a space to amplify our messages.
What are the future goals and the adaptation of EA? What are the main initiatives EA has planned for the future? And the second question is that how does EA plan to adopt Europe's evolving political and social landscape?
On upcoming plans, maybe I can mention 3 upcoming appointments concretely in case someone is interested or can attend. We have, by the end of February, around the 21st, a citizens' assembly in Florence that is going to have concerts, documentary screenings, and it's going to be focusing on the topics of food rights and migration. In April, we're organizing a festival on the environment in Palermo, also with different formats, food tasting, conferences, walks around the city, also to reflect on the challenges that climate and environment is presenting to us. And later in the summer, we have the next edition of Transeuropa Festival in the peripheries of Paris. And these different appointments, it's a confluence of work that EA continuously does in parallel. So we do run our research process, the training program, and these are more public moments in which our activities are presented. And the other question was about our adaptation to the political situation.
Yes.
I mean, that's a good question. In these times of rapid change, I guess that you need to be by nature dynamic, and also on your question about maybe sometimes organizations being in their ivory tower and not aware about what is actually happening. EA is quite open, and it's also made of dynamic and proactive citizens that make sure in the end that the organization adapts to the evolving political and social landscape. So I don't see that much of a risk there. But as I was mentioning before, there needs to be this openness and you need to keep your eyes open to make sure that you are not only talking to yourself and have an inwards looking perspective and sometimes strategy that risk of stagnation somehow, or brings you to an unmobile dynamic where you don't want to be as an organization, as EA in that sense. There is this active narrative at the moment where the far right is taking over, and that there is despair in our generation, and younger generations have a lot of challenges ahead of us, but in the end of the day, we also need to continue, and I don't see another way of continuing your life that it's not taking the control of your life ultimately and deciding what do you want to do with it, regardless of where you're coming from. Basically, that's for me, that's what empowerment is about, is understanding your reality, your possibilities, and trying to make the most of it critically. So we hope that we are contributing to that somehow.
Our closing question is about engaging citizens. So how can individuals or communities get involved in EA's work?
Well, digitally, they can simply subscribe to our newsletter to follow our ideas, proposals, narratives, and there we send all the different proposals and also content that is there. Physically, people can attend our events and actually contribute to them, as I would say, to ideas and proposal. Basically, everything is possible potentially at EA, so we always welcome also spontaneous applications, proposals. And very often these are the collaborations that end up going more successful. So somehow it's an invitation to try and make your contributions to what EA should be and could be. And we're super open to receive any kind of proposals. And then sometimes there are like job positions or specific open calls for many different things, such as now with the journal, open call for articles. But there are many different ways on that and possibilities.
This concludes our discussion on European alternatives. We extend our sincere thanks to Marta Cillero for her participation and for sharing valuable insights into the organization's mission, achievements, and future plans. For more information, all relevant links to European alternatives can be found in the description. This was a Forum Europeum interview, the pan-European media platform bringing cross-border discussions to the forefront. Thank you for watching.